Deaf Writers, Changing the Perspective on Digital Composing Practices of Deaf Students. All of my materials are available on NCTE Connected Community, and you can search for it under J22 Gretchen Cobb, and I have about 10 copies also. After graduating from with my bachelor's in deaf education, I worked in the field for a few years, and then I left the deaf community for over 20 years. During that time, I pursued degrees in the field of composition. Now, as a teacher of both writing to deaf high school English students and college composition students, I see the need for pedagogical approaches that provide an empathetic look into the needs of students as writers. I also see the need to boost the motivations of deaf students to write about their own struggles with language and education, and more importantly, to have their own language respected and honored in the classroom. One reward in the advancements of technology is the heightened communication of people around the world. A culture within our society that has benefited from easier access to digital communication is the deaf community. Platforms such as YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and newer sites such as Blogster and Glide afford deaf people greater efficacy in communicating within their own community, using their primary language, American Sign Language, or ASL. In addition to the availability of communication, these platforms intersect with the mainstream hearing community to help increase awareness of ASL and other facets of deaf culture. Some long-held myths of deaf culture and ASL are being dispelled thanks to YouTube and Facebook videos that discuss many of the nuances of ASL to clarify it as a complete, complex language with specific pragmatics and morphosyntax. One of the most damaging widespread myths connected to the deaf community is that deaf students possess lower cognitive abilities than their hearing peers do. Often, written communication is the basis for this determination. To date, research on composing practices of deaf students is minimal. However, many deaf students demonstrate higher order thinking skills using the sophisticated and complex linguistic structures of ASL, which does not have a written mode. I don't think about this one. Writing is not a skill for others to use in judging, but rather it is a tool, as Janet Enoch says, that creates a mode of learning. Writing is a series of threshold concepts that allow writers to build upon and contribute to a larger body of work. This corpus, or the written, is an entity that is already in existence. Conversely, the being written, or the act of writing to communicate and preserve thought, is the other side of the same coin, a coin that represents the value of thought. The creation of the written is for transmission of thought. However, its creation is minor compared to its preservation. So, in what ways can deaf student writers coexist with the written to transmit and preserve their thoughts? One possible answer to this question lies in the realm of digital composing. At the crux of digital composing lies the ability to preserve and transmit ideas through a variety of media: pictures, videos, PowerPoints, prozis, storytelling, and hybrid essays. As I've already mentioned, cognitive ability is not a factor when students are allowed the freedom to communicate in their own language. More important are the sociolinguistic practices of ASL users and current pedagogical theories that underpin composing in digital formats. While observing my students working on process-driven writing assignments, I noticed that many of them had difficulty engaging fully in a process for writing. So I began to hypothesize that the cause of this struggle may be due to the fact that ASL users need an opportunity to compose in their primary language. English users transmit and preserve ideas by writing on paper, but ASL users transmit through the air and preserve through visual media. With this in mind, I asked some of my colleagues if they would be willing to do some digital composing in their classrooms. A middle school writing teacher was already dabbling with digital composing and jumped at the opportunity to add more complexity to his assignments. Arkansas School for the Deaf, or ASD, is a residential facility which houses students from both urban and rural communities, different social economic backgrounds, and a variety of cultural practices. All students at ASD in grades 7 through 12, a total population of 41, were asked to participate in the study. The parents of 23 students returned signed consent forms. Throughout the year, the students participated in both pen and paper and digital process-driven composing projects. During both methods, the students completed teacher-selected elements such as brainstorming, listing, outlining, diagramming, drafting, and revising, either on paper or in a video. All assignments were graded using one classroom rubric designed for both written and digital formats. There's a handout available and it's also downloaded. An important aspect of this study is that the writing assignments are teacher-created projects based on Common Core standards. And while these assignments were created for middle and high school settings, they directly correlate to the various sections of the WPA outcome statement. Specifically, these projects allow students to, quote, develop flexible strategies for reading, drafting, reviewing, collaborating, revising, rewriting, rereading, and editing, and promote using strategies such as interpretation, synthesis, response, critique, and design or redesign to compose texts that integrate with the writer's ideas with those from appropriate sources, which is from the WPA. This is a recording. This is a recording of students working on a counter-narrative project. There's a handout available with the assignment and grading information and a checklist of the guidelines for formal ASL compositions. This first student is discussing ways in which deaf students can excel in sports. Starting and stopping, which is scored under fluency in that rubric, the ASL or VL1 section of the rubric seemed to be a bigger problem than I thought. Perhaps in a graded setting, they felt the pressure to perform more formally. This second student is commenting on the struggles of communication between deaf and hearing individuals. Surprisingly, many students seemed a little awestruck by recording themselves, which struck me as odd because most of our students use Glide or videos daily to communicate with their friends and family. And they never seem to have any qualms about video communication. And this last student is expressing how heightened visual acuity can forward the idea of deaf gain, the belief that deaf individuals interact and contribute to all of society in a positive way. Bless you. When the students transcribed their own video recordings onto paper, they were given autonomy to interpret their own meanings of ASL into written English. The students used a variety of methods to transcribe. The split screen, like you see there, or from a laptop, a PC, a camera, or a phone, right onto the paper. Also available in the handouts, oh no, it's not, never mind, I couldn't get a copy. But it is downloaded from the NCC community. But the results from my survey demonstrated strong feelings about digital composing, and you'll see in a minute, not necessarily positive. There was a slight number in favor of digital composing, but many of the students experienced success in both methods. So in a comparison of question 1 and 2 on the survey, question 1 states, when I completed a writing project entirely on paper, I felt confident my ideas were clearly communicated. 12 students agreed with this statement, 2 disagreed, and 9 were neutral. In the second question, the opposite, when I completed a writing project using video recordings for part of the project, I felt confident my ideas were clearly communicated. 13 agreed with this, 7 disagreed, and 3 were neutral. The interesting inference about these 2 questions is the number of students who got off the fence. The neutral responders dropped by 6, indicating clear decisions about digital composing. And then in a comparison of questions 5 and 6, question 5 states, writing on paper helped me understand that writing involves a process of pre-writing, drafting, revising, and producing a final copy. 13 agreed with this, 3 disagreed, and 7 were neutral. And then the inverse of that, when using video recordings for the process, helped me understand that writing involves a process. 14 agreed, 4 disagreed, and 5 were neutral. Again, the neutral numbers reduced. However, there's a small positive shift from the understanding of the process of digital composing. And there's also a copy of my works cited available. And in closing, an important reward from this research is the original compositions that were recorded by the deaf students. I only showed clips here today, but I actually got some really awesome original recordings where they were able to record in their primary language, granting them full access to their own language. Digital composing is already prevalent in universities all across the country. The visuospatial components that ASL embodies and the current digital practices of deaf students puts them ahead of the game. And perhaps with more research into digital composing practices of deaf writers, colleges and universities will adopt assessment guidelines that recognize the traits of ASL as formal compositions. Thank you.